Welcome, Selena. Thank you so much for joining us on the Beyond Barriers podcast. We are thrilled to have you here. I'm super stoked because of all of your background and the knowledge you have around women in leadership and how do women become better leaders. Your TED Talks, your all of the works, the content that you put out there in writing. You've worked for Wall Street Journal, NPR, always focusing on women in leadership. So we're here to really just tap your brain and get this information out to our audience so that they can learn how to be better leaders. So with that, let's dive right in. Tell us a little bit about your story and what you've learned along the way in your journey, and what got you to really, how did you identify your passion around women in leadership?
Yes, well, thank you so much for having me and for creating this forum. I love what you're doing to help women and advance women. For me, so much of my thirst to help women move into leadership roles came from this search for belonging in my own life. As far back as I can remember, I am the daughter of a Pakistani immigrant on one side, and I have a Caucasian American mom on the other side, right? Growing up in white suburban Philadelphia.
Right.
And to be honest with you, I never felt like a full card carrying member of either one of their worlds. I really didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I brought a lot of that search for belonging right into adulthood, into the work world. Here I was, a management consultant working on talent, 5'2", brown skin, 20 something woman, advising C-level leaders on their talent, all of whom looked the opposite of me in every single way. And I got really good, so good at giving them the kind of diet Sprite version of me. And, conforming to them, kind of mimicking what they did, muting my ideas. And it feels awful, right? If anyone listening has ever done that, right? It feels terrible. They're not getting anything memorable from you, and you're not bringing your full color self.
Right.
And so I saw that in other groups and other people. I saw that sometimes in other women, pressure to conform and fit in among people of color, among many groups who feel othered sometimes. And I thought, this is a conversation I can facilitate. Between employees who want to bring their full selves to work and feel comfortable, and employers, leaders who want to create these inclusive, welcoming atmospheres, where people can contribute their best.
That is so true. And I myself experienced the same thing, where there is that you realize that you are the only sometimes in some groups or in some meetings. And then what I like to call the minority tax of then, when someone is trying to, in rightfully so, they're wanting to learn more about you, your culture and things like that. But then you become the token example, and you're like, wait, but I'm not, like, I don't speak for the entire population that looks like me. So sometimes there's those pressures as well. But I love what you said about having to conform. And, one of the things that I started really talking to various different, groups and women, when I was talking about intersectionality and those types of things of, you do have to learn in organizations how to acculturate, but not necessarily assimilate. And remember that you're bicultural, and you hold on to your authentic self and your roots and who you are. And yes, when in Rome, do as Romans do, but you're still you. And, and so that's a really hard thing to do. So help us with, gaining some clarity around how did you, when you started realizing that, and like you said, you started, you were giving everybody the diet Sprite version. How did you transform, or how did you start kind of like, hey, this is the full authentic me? How did you really start sharing with people who you were and voicing and standing up and standing out?
Yeah, that's so important. And I really appreciate your comments about the minority tax and intersectionality. I think it was clear to me it wasn't helping me succeed, right? Again, they were not getting anything memorable or standout from me because
Mhm.
I'm trying to blend and fit in,
Right.
doing kind of a poor job bootlegging, I'm like the cover artist to their song, right? And
Right.
and it's not working. We can all sniff that phoniness sometimes in a person, or like they're trying too hard. So one of the things was, I wasn't killing it doing that. The other thing is, it felt lousy. It
Mm.
really did. It felt lousy. And I remember venturing a kind of exciting idea that did require me to put myself out there more.
Mhm.
And I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up as I was putting it out. But it felt really good to be bold,
Mm.
and stand out, to go out on a limb, knowing that limb could break, but that I can maneuver through this. And I think I started to gain a little more of that self-belief that if something goes wrong, if the branch breaks, like, you can fly, you can right yourself,
Yes.
you can right a situation that feels wrong.
Mhm.
It's not the end of the world. And so I think a big one is, stop avoiding failure like it's fatal,
Right. Yes, absolutely.
because that makes most of us freeze.
Yeah, and we pass up on opportunities because of that. And so talk a little bit about that, because you said you had this idea that you wanted to put out there and it was going to require you to kind of step out a little bit more. What are some of the techniques that help you overcome maybe those, limiting beliefs or that fear of like, oh my God, can I really do this? What did you do? How did you kind of just like get that courage to keep moving forward?
Yeah. Well, some of it's a little bit technical. So, one shift I made that made a difference was, instead of using the word can, you
Mhm.
know,
Yeah.
can we think about executing, ABC idea,
Mhm.
to let's, like,
Oh,
showing people my optimism and my excitement, and there's something magical about that little word let's, that creates cooperation, excitement, interest.
mhm.
And I think that was one verbal shift I started to make that
Mhm.
felt more empowering to me, and less like I was asking permission. Can we please look at
Yeah.
X topic? Can we maybe consider doing Y? That didn't feel that good.
Mhm.
Sometimes I'm not there to ask permission. I'm there to put an idea forward.
Yes.
So that little verbal shift from can to let's made a difference. One other thing I've noticed is, like, data, especially competitive data,
Mhm.
comps, benchmarks, make people sit up and listen. And often, people don't have that at their fingertips. So if you've done some homework to say, hey, we should offer flex work arrangements at this company. Three of our four competitors do it. All of them advertise on their careers page that they do it. Here's what one is offering.
Mhm.
Guess what? You become the world's foremost expert on that subject.
Mhm.
So, are there ways you can be the most informed person, or
Mhm.
maybe just have the most timely, relevant data on
Mhm.
the facts at hand? That's going to make you sit up straighter. It's going to make you speak with more conviction. It's going to make other people listen, because this is not just an interesting idea. It's got some teeth to it now. So bring those comparables, those benchmarks that are very hard to argue with.
Yeah. I love that because they are very tangible techniques. And I love the shifting or reframing the language from can to let's, because it's empowering. And it's like, let's do this. And you kind of are taking the charge and leading the charge. And it's amazing how, that tiny little word, those 3-letter words can, really empower you if you change it around. I love that one. I'm going to remember that one myself. I'm just
Let's try it out today.
do this.
I know, I think
Do
we
this.
should.
That's fantastic. Now, tell me a little bit about one of the things we get from women all the time is, um, the discouragement they get with, okay, they get excited, they're going to move forward, they try to do these things, and then they have either a setback or a failure, and they kind of then lose the wind in their sails per se. What have you done that really helps you continue to move forward, to kind of overcome those failures and setbacks, to keep pushing forward?
I love that question. And it's especially meaningful to me because I have tried to avoid failing my entire life. I
Mhm.
mean, truly, let me avoid rejection, face plants, embarrassment of any kind. And there's a big problem with that. And there's a flaw with that,
Mhm.
which is, I'm not that big on sports analogies, but the more you kind of sit in the dugout and watch the game,
Mhm.
versus play it and
Right.
get dirty and
Mhm.
try and practice and learn. Yes, you protect yourself, but you don't get a lot out of that. And I think I way overestimated in my own life,
Mhm.
how great and safe the dugout was. And
Right.
one of the things I encourage a lot of women to do is whenever you have a choice, play.
Mm. Yeah.
Don't feel like you need to sit there and over study and over observe. And I need 3 more years until I'm ready. And I need another degree before I can get in there. No, if you ever have a choice between action, trying, experimentation versus, wait, watch, get
Mhm.
in there and try. Yes, it's going to lead to some fails
Mhm.
and some, you know, falling on your face, frankly,
Right.
but you are going to accelerate your success, your confidence, your self-belief. Um, the other thing I think is really important is, I get rejected and fail all the time. I'm writing a third book right now. I've, written 2 books, pitched them to publishers. They were bought and sold. I had a rejection last year from a publisher.
Mhm.
And one of the things I think about is think about rejection
Mhm.
as redirection.
Mm.
Sometimes when you fail or you didn't get that job you wanted, or you didn't get the publishing contract that you wanted for something specific,
Mhm.
it works out.
Right.
Sometimes you're even relieved. And in that case, I think back to that book concept, and it wasn't quite the right one. Getting that no helped me think a little harder about what really is meaningful to me. And I'm
Right.
much more excited about my concept now.
Mhm.
So I think see some of it as a closed door that didn't work out for a good reason, to take you to a better place. So sometimes that fail is just a redirection, you
I love
know.
that. Yeah, I love the redirection because exactly, and I love your example of, you already are a very successful, best-selling author, and you had an idea and it got shot down. But then rather than you seeing it like, okay, I'm done, that's it, it's kind of like, no, let this redirect me. How could it even be better? And keep moving forward. And now you have this amazing, book concept that you're moving forward to, which I think is fantastic. So it's the redirection of, how might I make this better then? And just, continuing to iterate. One question, because I did look, you do have done quite a bit of research in when you were doing your books. And one of them, I recall you doing a lot of one-on-one interviews with women and trying to understand what the new face of leadership was going to look like. Share with us some of those insights that you had on, what did you find was, maybe, um, I guess, psychologically holding women back, or what were you surprised that you learned in those interviews?
Oh, talk about an awesome education, right? I feel so lucky that I got to sit down and have now over my career 50 plus interviews with C-level women.
Right.
So, so grateful to them. But I think one of the surprises, I'll tell you a few. One of them was that, you know, they were not like Teflon coated from imposter syndrome,
Mm. Mhm.
and that sense that, oh, am I a fraud? Should I really be here? Did I get invited to the party by mistake? Those questions that most, I think all of us face at some point or another. It's
Mhm.
not like that ended
Mhm.
and they had this perfect golden path to the top. Not at all. one of the realizations I loved hearing from them was many of them said, I didn't just hammer myself for my weaknesses. I
Mm,
really identified early on some of my natural strengths and I cultivated them into superpowers.
mm,
And I found that really empowering because I think so much messaging thrown at women is about imperfection and how they need to be shoring up their weaknesses and stop looking like the before picture and look like this after picture. And this message that, wait a minute, you can take what you're really good at and just supersize it and really invest in that felt fresh and new. And
mm.
there's one more I want to share with you that I'll never forget. A common message I heard was, you know what? I may not be the world's foremost financial expert as a CFO
Mhm.
or the top operations person on the planet as a COO, but I am more tenacious than most.
Mm.
And that was such a great message to hear from some of these women. The CFO of Nike, Dee Dee Wilson, was one of them. And she said, I was told I was not CFO material. Um, but I wasn't afraid to go back 5 more times and say, how about now? How about under these slightly different circumstances? How about with this different timing? And boy, that has made such a huge impact on me.
Mhm.
Tenacity matters.
Yes.
It's not just this rah, nice to have message. It really can be a difference maker in your career.
That is so fantastic that you said that, the whole tenacity and that intrinsic motivation to keep moving forward. And you teach a lot on like how do you tap into that internal motivation. Tell us a little bit about how women do that, because like you said, a lot of these women were just more tenacious, they just were much more motivated, but I think sometimes people get mixed up with, there's willpower and there's motivation. Willpower like fizzles out. How do you tap
Mhm.
into that motivation? What is it that you teach people to do so that they can keep moving forward and don't burn out?
Yeah, I think one is keep your purpose close.
Mm,
Why are you doing that thing? Why are you building that business? Why are you launching that program? Like your big why,
mhm,
not your maybe small practical why, but your big, deep why. Well, I'm doing this or I'm writing this book. For me right now, not just to give people confidence because I want everyone to walk around like a proud peacock.
right.
No, the real why is that I want people to do big things and have the greatest impact in their life.
Mhm.
That's really what drives me. And looking at that, seeing it on those days where I want to give up or I want to trash the idea or I'm too tired to write 5 more words on a page
Yes.
helps tremendously. So keep your purpose close. Don't keep it just up here.
Mhm.
Put it on a post-it on your monitor if you have to. Give yourself that food every day of
Mhm.
purpose. It makes a difference. I think another thing is shrink the size of your goals. And
Mm.
I hope your listeners like that advice, right? Because it's doing less, not more. Um, but it's true. I think, sometimes when we're frozen
Mhm.
from a motivation perspective, we might be throwing too much at ourselves. So maybe you're wanting to start the big market research project. Maybe instead of that, it's develop the timeline for the project.
Mhm.
Take something important and do one small thing that's going to contribute to it getting started and creating that momentum.
Right.
So really important, but shrink the size of those goals. Last thing, celebrate your wins.
Yes.
Really, take the time to celebrate your wins. I
Mhm.
find even in a networking call where I'm speaking to a friend like you and I'm happy to see you and we're catching up. Hey, can I share a quick win with you?
Yes.
People generally want to hear that. So share these with your friends and your colleagues and your family members. It's going to give you that moment to relish it.
That's fantastic. Yes. I mean, that's something that we teach all the time in the Beyond Barriers program, is that celebrate not just achievement, celebrate your progress. So like you said, I really loved how you said shrink your goals, because yes, you have that big North Star, big goal, but how do you break it down from that yearly thing to the quarterly, to the monthly, to the, weekly, to the daily thing. What's the one thing you're going to do today? And then when you get it done, celebrate that you got that one thing done, because it means that you're moving forward. And we tend to wait and celebrate that achievement a year later, right? But the whole grunt work all the way through, you didn't celebrate. So I love what you said of just reaching out to other people and celebrating each other, and, just having that little bit of energy that fuels you to, say, hey, I'm trekking along and I'm going to celebrate the progress. I love that. Absolutely love it. Now, one thing that I've noticed, over the course of my years in coaching, mentoring women, is that, we have a strong sense of community, but we don't leverage that community the way that we should. Kind of, the men have this good old boys network, and, it's like who, and they get things done, and they don't think twice about it. But women have this hesitancy where they don't want to ask for help, or ask a friend or a colleague for help, because they feel like it's selfish in some way. Can you share a little bit about how you've leveraged your community in the past, and how it has helped you get ahead, and kind of make it the new normal of like, hey, we should be lifting each other up and helping one another?
Mhm. I would say the first confession there is it hasn't been easy or natural for me. I think my first word my mom said when I was a baby was self. Like, I want to do it myself. And so I have a hard time asking for help. I think I always have. And yet I love community. I love teaming with other people. So there's something in me I need to sometimes push past to say, how can I get help? One thing I like to do is change it to input, so I have I spend a lot of time with my community on LinkedIn, right? I teach LinkedIn learning courses, but I also write a newsletter every week. And there's like 19,000 people waiting for the next one, looking for a boost of confidence,
Right.
who will tell me, what resonates in particular. And I think, maybe look at it as gathering input, testing your ideas with people. I think that's a way for your community to be there for you, where you're not always saying, hey, SOS, I need help, I'm in danger. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. We all need to do that sometimes. But maybe reframing for yourself, what are some other ways to engage with that community? I think one is, I'm going to test some ideas and theories about what I think is meaningful by putting content out. I think another could be posing questions to your community. I love some of the polls that I see on social media, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, where you're merely asking some questions. And maybe creating dialogue in a new way. So look at the many ways you can engage that group, beyond the ask for help, which can be important. I think, let me say this, if you are going to ask for help, I would encourage you to be specific. And I mean that, not just in a group interaction, maybe where you're posting something online, but even if you're reaching out to that woman you admire for a one-to-one coffee or Zoom meeting. Be as specific as you can, because you'd be surprised how many people write with a kind of vague, I'm not quite sure what you want from me kind of invitation. And maybe the person says yes, but they don't know if you're there purely for a get to know you. Hi, I just find you interesting and I'd love to chat with you about life. Or if you were there to talk pointedly about career and career experiences. So if you can, and I think you almost always can, be specific. I'd love 30 minutes with you to talk about how you negotiated a budget for X. I'd love 30 minutes with you to talk about what you've learned being a manager in the advertising industry. I'd love 30 minutes with you to ask some questions about how to run a successful blog. If you can do that, you will get so much more out of that meeting.
That's fantastic, and really great advice of like knowing the ask, and being able to then take that information, leverage that information. And I'd love to add that, I think it's also the closed loop communication too. After you get that information and you go apply it somewhere, letting them know like, hey, what you told me was super valuable. But I think that's fantastic of knowing the ask and being specific, because you're right. We can be very vague of, hey, I'd like, 30 minutes to get to know you. And it's kind of like, for them, it's kind of like, well, what's in it? What's in it for me? You may get the no if they're really, really busy, but if you give them something really specific, then they're like, hey, yeah, I can do this. I love that. And I think it definitely helps in getting the yes and getting to know those individuals. Um, let's shift gears a little bit, because I loved how you were talking about the big goals and focusing on one thing, but the other thing is having the goals but then executing on them and finding that path. And you're someone who has written 2 books, done all of these LinkedIn learning courses, you write all these things. When you set those goals, how did you actually break them down and execute on them? Like what are some tips or some tricks or habits that you do in order to actually execute and move forward?
Well, somebody asked me the other day, how was it writing a book? And I told them, I had a very clean house during that time, because I would like find any other thing to do some moments than what I needed to do. And that happens to us all with a daunting task sometimes, right? We want to put our eyes on any other thing than that thing we're supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
And I think what ultimately helped was to give myself little outs and little breaks to look forward to.
Mhm.
So if you've heard or your listeners have heard of the Pomodoro method, where you go hard with very singular focus for 25 minutes
Mhm.
with the promise of a 5-minute break
Mhm.
after that 25,
Uh-huh.
that's doable, right? Most of
Yeah,
us can
yeah.
do that.
Mhm.
And it feels more achievable. So it's back to this idea of shrinking what's in front of us into smaller pieces so that it's more manageable, and more enjoyable, by the way.
Right.
I think that's an important thing here. So looking forward to a break is awesome. I'm one of those people who I will look forward to a vacation
Yeah.
every day for months, knowing it's coming. And
Mhm.
that may be just as enjoyable as going on the actual trip for me.
Yeah.
So how can you do that for yourself? Maybe it's getting up and getting a snack. I'm
Mhm.
going to stretch and have a little walk around like the block
Right.
during that time. I'm going to talk to a friend. What is that for you that'll excite you?
Uh,
And, I think another important piece of execution for me is I am very relational,
mhm.
and having an accountability buddy, as I call it, makes a difference.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes that's somebody you've paid. In my case, maybe it's somebody who's expecting my book notes
Mhm.
today at 5 p.m., right?
Yeah.
Or it's a marketing person. I promised them enough content, that they were going to help put on social media,
Mhm.
and I need to get them that Friday by noon.
Mhm.
Enlist those people. There's something to that idea of why it works when we go to a personal trainer.
Right.
We've paid them, we've made the investment, they're going to hold us accountable if we don't do it. And for me, that's very motivational.
That's fantastic. Yes, the whole idea around accountability and having those accountability buddies to really kind of keep you on task. And you're right. I mean, we have to do that, because otherwise we we will find all other types of excuses and reasons to not do what we need to get done. So I love that. So, in closing, I love to ask all of our podcast guests of, what are some parting words that you would love to leave with our audience around how they can continue to accelerate their success, especially in this environment that's constantly changing, given just the digital disruption, but you never know, a pandemic, all of those types of things. How do women stay on top of things and continue to accelerate and be successful?
I would say tell your story as you go.
Hmm.
Don't wait to tell your story.
Hmm.
We need more women's stories in this world, and you are enough as you are. So many of us have 1,000,001 stories, but we don't necessarily think of them as special and worth telling. They
Hmm.
are worth telling. They
Yeah.
are worth telling. So really look at your own story. Think about your wins and your losses and your hardest moments, and some of your best breakthroughs, and start telling more of those stories. Start putting more content out in the world and sharing that with others. We need to hear it. So don't disqualify yourself.
That is fantastic. And absolutely, visibility is everything. And like you said, if you're putting your head down and just working and not letting people see you and know who you are and what you're doing, then yes, you're going to get overlooked. So definitely stand up, stand out, share your story, and let the world see you. We need to see more of those stories. So thank you so much, Selena. I so appreciate your time. And I know that our audience is going to want to follow you, hear more of these amazing tidbits and lessons that you've shared. So, what is the best way for our audience to stay connected with you and get more of your content?
Yeah, well, I would love that. Please do reach out to me. My website is selenarezvani.com. So that's a great place to find me. I have a newsletter there. You can follow me on LinkedIn and Instagram and TikTok, where I've made a debut, which has been really fun to get to know TikTok.
Uh-huh.
And reach out. I'd love to hear from you. My books are on Amazon, Pushback and the Next Generation of Women Leaders.
Fantastic. Again, thank you so much. And we look forward to following you.
Thank you.